So I'm here with Thomas just to go through some of the production techniques for producing the factory edges and looking at how, if you look very, very closely, you start to see perhaps a micro-bevel, although as you've explained to me, it's not. That's not the intention.
Yeah.
Could we look first of all, now one of the particular examples that I found a little bit more difficult to see how you've done it because of the black blade coating,
Yes.
Bushcraft Black. You actually, there is no bare metal, is there, at this point in the finish, the brand new knife?
Yeah, it's no bare metal.
So that final finishing is after all of your blade preparation and the final factory edge. So could you just run me through with this how you've produced that?
If we start from the beginning, it's a stamping from a coil that has to go through a heat treating and annealing. Then we have the grindings. You start with the side grindings, then the spine grinding, and finally the edge grinding. And in the same machine that does the spine, the edge grinding, there's also like a rubber wheel with some polishing into it. So the edge gets polished, so you get all the burrs away.
Is this one step then?
No.
The main grind?
The side grinding is one machine,
yeah.
The spine grinding is another machine, the edge grinding and this finishing is one machine.
Okay. And sort of immediately one after the other, as it's created the bevel, it will do the polishing as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just, I would say, is 0.1, 0.2 millimeter high.
Okay.
If you look in a microscope, you can see where it has been polishing the edge to get rid of the burrs.
Okay. And you mentioned about depending on the wear on that wheel, it might appear a little bit wider.
Yes.
Okay.
It has a natural variation.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a robot making it, but it depends on how worn the wheel are, etc.
While you've got that in your hand, I just want to grab the Garberg as well. So this is produced with a similar, the same machinery.
Yes, exactly the same machinery, but this doesn't get the DLC coating.
Yeah.
So maybe it will be easier to spot the final finishing on the edge.
Yes, it certainly stood out a little bit more to me. Now, when it comes to the end of the edge, with the Bushcraft and with the Companion and most of the other popular knives you have, the new Eldris and the Kansbol, is that the right pronunciation?
Yes.
The edge goes right into the handle.
Yes.
So on the Kansbol, why did you choose not to?
It's going to be a more sturdy knife. If we're looking at her history, the more fancy of the classic Mora knives had this ricasso, or what you call it.
Okay, they did. Right.
Oh yeah. If you go on our homepage, our webpage, we have a lot of old catalogs from early 1900 until the 1990s, I think, or maybe 2000. We have some old catalogs from different Mora knife manufacturers. There have been 15 to 20 different manufacturers in our town over the time, and we represent them all. We bought a few, and others went out of business, but I would like to honor all their names. So I collected all the catalogs I could find, scan them and put them into PDF files that you can look at or download at our homepage. And there you can look at the old knives. Some of them has this ricasso.
Okay.
100 years ago.
Yes. So, but this is any other models in your current range have that?
Let me think. We have discontinued some knives recently, like the 277 that had this. A lot of our hunting knives over the years had exactly this grinding.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the intention for resharpening these, but after, because you mentioned something interesting with the polished blades. You had one example there, which was the polished knife. So in this one, the stages are, I've always been amazed at the brand new Morakniv knife, where the polishing is across the entire blade, absolutely everything, out of the packet, razor sharp, and the whole thing polished. So no visible edge bevel, apart from the main.
But it is there. This has been the edge finish has been made on a very fine diamond belt. But after the polishing and buffing, it's maybe not noticeable with a bare eye. But if you have a very good microscope, you might be able to spot it. But the buffing takes out all the edges from that micro-bevel, so it's very hard to see.
And I suppose,
but it has to be there to make a stronger edge. And there is one exception, and that is if you go for, let me see, one of the carving knives. This is one of our carving knives with laminated steel. This is what I would call a Scandi-grind 0. It has been just slightly polished to take away any burrs, but it has no micro-bevel.
Okay.
Because you don't want that when you are carving. This is a vulnerable,
that's the true zero grind Scandinavian edge.
This is a fragile, vulnerable edge. Carvers usually resharpen their knives several times a day, or they have a bunch of knives so they can change every once in a while and go and grind the knives all in one time. An ordinary Mora knife that most of us know always have this kind of micro-bevel to make the edge stronger. Okay. But it might be very hard to see after the buffing, but it's there.
But
it's there.
That buffing process as well, you've almost stropped it further and refined that edge even more. So in terms of, you mentioned that a robot does the edge finishing. How do you check the quality that, how many knives coming off are, they're all razor sharp, or some are maybe slightly better than others? Is there, how do you sort of keep an eye on that?
We have a couple of testing equipment for that. We have one machine in our laboratory that when we are developing knives, checking on competition, trying out new material or grinding angles or whatever. Then we have one machine that you're testing the edge durability. You're actually cutting in paper that it's a lot of clay in that paper, and it's almost like cutting in sandpaper. It makes the edge dull very fast.
It's like cutting dirty rope.
Yes. So you are checking how many papers it cuts in each strike or stroke. So you can see if it gets dull fast or if it holds up for a while, and you can compare. But that's not a test done in the production. We have another machine for that. Both these machines are, I think it's an English standard, Katra. Let's see. You know about that? What you do, you have a, I don't know the English word for it. You put the blade in a fixture,
a vise or a clamp,
and the machine pushes it into a rubber or silicone piece, and the force needed is a measure on how sharp it is.
Okay.
So,
although geometry plays a big part
yes,
in that.
yes, of course. You cannot compare a 2 mm thick blade with a 23 degrees edge angle with a 3.2 with a 27, because they get different value depending on edge angles and thickness and etc. But within the particular blade, you can see that it has to be within some limits. You don't want it too sharp, then it will be too fragile. And you don't want it too dull, because then it won't cut as you need. So depending how big batch is, you take 5 samples every once in a while to check, and you get to the measures, you see that they are within the limits.
Okay. Okay.
And I think they measured in Newton, so depending on knives, I think this knife should be between 0.5 and 1 Newton, and it cuts into the into this rubber material.
Yeah. Now I've got to move on. Unless there are any other things regarding the sort of production that we haven't covered, is there anything you can think of?
Not that I remember now. I read a lot of Facebook group and other knife forums. They talk about factory set angle. I don't think that is that important to keep the factory set. If you're carving in, let's say, soft wood, make a more narrow edge that suits the purpose. If you're working in harder wood or whatever you're going, make a wider angle that suits your purpose. It's your knife. Grind it the way it fits your...
You give us a starting point.
Yeah, I give you a starting point. That is average value.
You touched on it because of the wood carving blades, where it is a true zero edge.
Yes.
And that obviously, it makes sense that for further use, every time you sharpen it, you're aiming for that zero edge.
Yeah.
And this is now going into one of those areas where it's one of those difficult things, because it's beyond manufacturing. It's now, the knife is out, it's being used. Do you have an intention for the way it's sharpened? One of the reasons I ask this is because there's a great popularity in the Scandinavian edge for wood preparation, but for a lot of users, they find it very easy to set it on a stone and follow the original edge. And if that's all you stick to, you'll end up with a zero grind.
Yes.
So,
but the minute you strop it, you actually start wearing it down on the thinnest part of the edge. So by definition, it
gains the micro-bevel from the stropping.
Yes, depending on how much polishing it's on the leather.
Yes.
You usually have some wax or something that will wear off the burrs.
Yes. Although I certainly, as I've looked into stropping more, there's been quite a lot of discussion about the different materials you use, including things like denim set on a wooden base, and thick or thinner leather. And the more give the stropping surface has, the more convexing you get on that edge and the final edge. So, well, I suppose I'm going to answer my own question there. It's going to be what suits the individual user, which stropping they want to use. But okay, so although there will be those users though who will just use a stone, and they'll end up with a zero edge unless they increase the angle and give it that.
And the more wax or the more coarse wax you use, the more it will make a kind of micro-bevel. Yes.
Actually, talking about that, because you've mentioned about the polishing and the buffing on the various blades, a lot of users go with a rougher finish rather than that real polish, because you get those sort of micro serrations and they can cut really quite aggressively and last longer in some cases depending on what you're cutting. Do any of the factory edges on the knives have a rougher finish, or are they all that sort of polished?
Most knives doesn't have. There is one very clear exception, and it's knives for insulation. They have a really big, large burr, because that cuts very well into the insulation.
Okay. So intentionally left with a burr?
Yes. And so we sometimes get claims from our customers, and we have to tell them it's there on purpose. Just try it out and you see how good it works in the isolation.
So is that, you know how with woodworking tools there's the thing called a scraper, where the edge on a scraper, just a piece of metal, is actually a burr. When I've been looking at how those are sharpened and prepared, they have a burnishing tool that you use to actually create a bit of a burr on the edge. It sounds very similar, but maybe not something you're familiar with, but that's very interesting. Okay, right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Really interesting discussion.